This video is sponsored by the Cuphead Amino. Amino is an app for iOS and Android, and it's a great place for fans of Cuphead or pretty much anything else to connect. There's fan art, polls, quizzes, chat boards, and all sorts of other great features. You can find a community for pretty much anything here. I've found communities for Cuphead, Mario, all sorts of cartoons, and even some really obscure shows that I didn't think anyone else remembered. You're sure to find something you'll like, along with a whole bunch of dedicated fans producing content. You can get the Amino app by clicking the link in the description or by searching Amino in the App Store. Now, onto the video. Hi everyone, my name is Elliot, and you're watching the first episode of my new show, which I'm calling... Well, I'll come up with a name later, but the point is that I'm super passionate about both video games and animation, and when something like Cuphead comes along and expertly blends the two together, I can't help but ramble about it incessantly to whoever will listen. Now, I could make a video about all the stuff you've already been hearing about, like how many total frames of animation are in the game, or how it's really hard, or how the creators put so much of their resources into it that they had to remortgage their home. But to me, judging the game just by the sensation surrounding it would be doing it a disservice. This is the kind of game that you only ever see once in a lifetime, and it deserves to be analyzed as such. So what is it that makes Cuphead work so well? The simple answer is nostalgia, and of course that's nothing new. Games have been using nostalgia to sell copies for as long as I can remember, but that's just the thing. It doesn't always work. You can open up Steam right now and easily find a truckload of games that are trying to evoke the feeling of the old Atari or NES games. While the aesthetic has a lot of charm to it, not all of them really understand what it was about the source material that people are so nostalgic about in the first place. Probably the easiest example for me to pick on here is Mighty No. 9. This is a game that was really trying to use people's nostalgia for Mega Man to their advantage. They copied the characters, the setting, the gameplay, and nearly everything else about it. But for some reason, they just didn't commit to doing any of it well. And sadly, that is enough to ruin the experience. Cuphead absolutely does not have that problem. Rather than use the Fleischer Disney style as a cheap visual gimmick, Cuphead completely immerses itself in classic animation and incorporates it into its very identity. Everything is always moving, and it constantly keeps up this sort of insane energy all the way through. And that's something that really struck me when I went back to watch the old cartoons Cuphead was based on. The characters pretty much always had to be moving. They couldn't pause for 5 minutes to tell jokes because there usually wasn't any dialogue at all. In fact, story took a backseat as well in early cartoons. Disney didn't need to tell a story with skeleton dance, because, hey, there's dancing skeletons on the screen. What story could enhance that? It's just animation for the sake of animation, and it's all the more fun to watch because of that. And, of course, Cuphead retains that spirit of animation for the sake of animation. Story didn't come into deciding how the bosses would look or what they would do. They just sort of figured out what would look coolest and what would be the most fun within the game, and they worked with that. So yes, while this game is deeply rooted in nostalgia, it doesn't only rely on that. The creators could have rigged up something decently retro-looking in Adobe Flash, and then slapped an old film grain effect over it, like, you know, I did. But they were going for full authenticity, and that started with drawing every frame by hand on paper. You've already heard about how they did that, but it really is integral to how Cuphead's charm shows itself. Seeing the jittery lines on detailed parts of characters, or the boil effect they put on objects even when they weren't moving, really emphasizes the human error that went into the animation here, and yes, into the original cartoons. What I love about this is that since this game was made in the modern day, everything is super well documented. Thanks to the power of social media, we can actually see the original pencil animation for the game. It really gives you a sense to how much detail was put into it. The body of Dr. Call's robot is fairly simple pose-to-pose animation, but the arms and antenna are swinging all over the place. That's why they were animated in blue pencil, so that they could still keep track of which parts were making which movements. And this all ties into the gameplay really well. It's a super hard game, of course, but when you die, it's very rarely the game's fault. Most attacks have a little wind-up animation that plays to alert the player to what the enemy's gonna do. And seeing that the game gives you as many tries as you need to beat each boss, it can't really be said that the difficulty is unfair. Little things like that are what really stand out to me about Cuphead. They didn't have to go into this much detail at all. They didn't have to give each boss multiple stages, each with their own unique animations. But they did. They didn't have to give King Dice a Cab Calloway style musical number. But they did. And they didn't have to hand paint the backgrounds. But they did. Nowhere in the production of Cuphead did the creators settle or say, that's good enough. They worked and worked and worked until their game was exactly what they envisioned. This game isn't the kind of thing you make to cash in on a trend, or because you think it'll sell. This is a game you make because you're passionate about it, and that shows in every aspect of Cuphead's design. So, this was my first review of a game, and I think I picked a bit of a tricky one, because I don't think I can really give this game a grade. When you look at something that had this much love and care put into it, you find that any flaws it has really don't matter to you anymore. Cuphead might be just the game for you. There's only one way to find out, and that's to play it. And that's all I have to say. Thank you guys for watching.